What is up, everyone? Aeneas here. So, I might have spoken a little bit too soon about the meta, but let's take a look at it. Take a look at standard, best of one and best of three. Check out some of the tournaments that happened over the weekend. There were quite a lot, to be honest, way more than normal. And then let's also look at some pretty cool brews people are still trying out. And you didn't know there was a new alchemy set that came out, and a lot of people were trying stuff in historic and alchemy for that. So take a look at some of that as well. Anyway, let's get into it. Alrighty, folks. So yes, let's get into the meta right now. So standard looking a little bit worse than it was last week. We saw last week that aggro was going down a little bit, losing some stocks, and some of the mid range and control was going up. Especially control, it looked like it was making a good climb. However, it seems like things have kind of gone a little bit back into the aggro's favor. Auxiliary soldiers up from, I think it was 58, back up to almost 60% win rate again. Naya humans, that was an up and coming one. Now sitting at the second most highest win rate of the decks. So very powerful. I guess people found out that it's a little bit better than the mono white deck, but not quite as good as soldiers, it seems. And mono white, yeah, also still up there. We got Selesnya aggro is kind of the first of the next tier. The poison deck is doing very well, very strong. Uh, has that good reach so that even if you can't get through with the damage, you can get through with the poison. So pretty scary deck, and doing well. Esper Legends, kind of like the lone survivor of the mid-range decks in best of one. And of course, mono red, no slotch either here. Um, Doing very respectably with 56%. So unfortunately, there's some not so good decks. They're still fine, but not doing as well. Gruul aggro, mono black, Rakdos, even Grixis in best of one is not that great. Mono blue, stuff like that. And the decks that were doing well, the mono white control, and there's a few other Atraxa decks that were doing okay. They've dropped down a little bit, 52%. So still okay, but not great. So yeah, it looks like aggro's coming back up. It's fighting for the title still. So might have a little bit of trouble there in best of one. As for like the meta today, looks about the same, right? You got soldiers, you got toxic, you got mono red, and I guess the mid range of choice right now is Grixis. It's the only one that's doing very well against those other decks. But popularity wise, mono red soldiers still make up a huge portion of the meta, over 30%, almost 40% to be honest. So if you can get a deck that beats those I mean, not even three, just like different versions of mono red and soldiers, then you're going to be pretty good in this format because you'll probably have at least a 50% win rate because you're beating those decks. So aim low, have some life gain, stuff like that if you want to deal with these aggro decks. Okay, in best of three, a little bit different story. We see a lot of the mid-range decks can have some sweepers or things like that to deal with the aggro. So tier 1, Rakdos. I believe this is the Invoke Despair version. I don't know if this one has Atraxa, but there are a few Rakdoses that are splashing a few Atraxas in there to reanimate off Gix command. But I think this is a more traditional version with just Invoke Despair. Selesnya Toxic is surprisingly good in best of three as well. So that's kind of like the only aggro deck that is good in best of one and best of three, for right now at least. Mono Red also very respectable. This is the more low to the ground version, it looks like. But yeah, Mono Red doing well. Mono White mid range or Mono White control is respectable in best of three. Not the greatest, but respectable. Mardu, same thing. Grixis, same thing. Jund, same thing. So really, the more aggressive, more streamlined versions of the deck seem to be doing well, and somehow Rakdos is in the top, but usually Grixis and Esper end up in this top spot in best of three the last couple weeks at least. So we'll see. they might come back up there. As for today, yeah, look at that Esper there, 60%. So that's what I was expecting really. And Toxic also very good, and Mono Red also very good. So this is probably your top 4 meta right now in the best of 3 format, to be honest. With Grixis being just slightly worse than these 4 decks, probably because the mana base is a little bit more consistent and the payoff is there. Whereas Grixis, it's not always necessarily worth it to splash the blue in your deck. Blue is pretty weak right now, I would say. There's a few blue creatures that are decent, like an Esper midrange, Rafine, like that. But really, I think the only blue card that sees quite a bit of play is Make Disappear. So that's what Grixis is like. Do I splash for Make Disappear or not? Yeah. But it's really popular in best of 3, so if you play best of 3, you have to keep that in mind. All right, and there were a ton of tournaments this weekend, way more than normal. That's because here in Japan, over in Yokohama, they had a big tournament, and I guess 2 big tournaments in standard, it seems like. So we're gonna look at some of those results. And unlike last week where we saw a lot of new Brews taking the #1 spot, this time it seems like a lot of the old decks are doing pretty well. We got Esper Legends. They're at #1 of this really huge, massive tournament in Yokohama. Just kind of your standard. Looks like Esper. I mean, it's got a few one-offs, spicy one-offs, Raven Man, Edgar, um, things like that, but not a whole lot of innovation on this one. Just kind of the Esper Legends aggro kind of thing. #2 though is Grixis Reanimator, which is kind of cool to see. So Atraxa is still very good, and people who can afford to play Atraxa, I guess it's pretty expensive right now in paper, but yeah, pretty strong card. And then #3 also Esper, but a different version of Esper. But yeah, still an Esper aggro mid-range kind of deck. And finally, 4th place, Jund. That's a little surprising. We've seen Jund not do particularly well. But I think if you are attacking the right meta, it could work out. Like Tyvar is quite strong, and especially with the Blood Tithe Harvester, you can get that combo early on. You can use that to kill a lot of the aggro decks. So that's pretty strong. Got a few other interesting cards like Vraska's Betrayal Sting and an Atraxa in here, which I guess they just cast that normally somehow. Anissa as well. So yeah, a few interesting cards in that. Maybe that's what kind of pushed them over because previously the Jund wasn't doing well, but maybe the Anissa and a few other of these one-off cards kind of helped push them over the top of the other decks. So yeah, interesting. All right, next tournament we got Grixis taking #1 spot. So that's pretty normal. Yeah, not a lot of new stuff in there. They have a Blade Coil Serpent, which is not bad, but rest is pretty normal. Blesnia Poison. Yeah, it's been coming up. People have been streamlining this deck, and now it's taking down tournaments. So you gotta watch out for green white. And that's Rei Sato, of course. Rei Sato is a legend. And so no surprise that he can take a deck that is good, but maybe not the #1 deck, but just his pilot skills are so good that he can get the #2 spot. Yeah, not a whole lot. Mono Blue Tempo is a little bit interesting to see here as well. Delver, Haughty Jin, that kind of stuff. But I think blue can always have a good day. It can also have a bad day, so not too surprising. And the rest is, let's say, pretty normal. All right. If we keep going, this was another tournament that happened over the weekend. Yeah, Grixis took it down. Mono Red #2. This one's definitely more boring on the results, but props to the people who did make it and beat out all their opponents to get there. Definitely, that's a tough feat. So, pretty props to them. Yeah, same thing for this tournament. Looks like Grixis again. And this one had Esper as number 2. Lots of Grixis, wow. The whole top end is Grixis, so even though Grixis is not doing as strong on the ladder, it seems to be still the fan favorite for tournaments and still doing quite well. Oh yeah, definitely not a pushover. Okay, the last one we have is the standard top 8 challenge, or just standard challenge, but the top 8 places. Just gonna look at the top 4 though. We see in first place, looks like Esper mid range, took that one down. Then Poison for number 2. Poison took down number 3. And Esper took 4. So Esper and Poison took down everything in the standard challenge. Yeah, both of those very solid. Kind of hoping we get rotation soon so we can get rid of some of these just good stuff decks. But Poison is just a totally new deck, so I guess that one's not going anywhere anytime soon. But yeah, I don't know. I'm a little sick of the Esper mid range. I kind of can't wait for that to be gone. All right, but that's it for the tournaments. Now let's talk about some of the cool decks people have been trying out. I think as the meta started to get stale again a little bit, people thought they wanted to experiment to try new things, just to freshen it up a little bit. So we got quite a lot of brews. First one we got is this green-white aggro list. So this is not even a poison deck, just kind of a, yeah, I guess green-white humans basically. Got Malira, the Living Cure, which helps against the poison deck. Also protects one of your creatures, and it's a big, nice body and a human. Then the other innovation is Sigarda, which pumps all your humans. Flying, 4/4, good stats. Catilda gives you some ramp. And Adeline is one that kind of got left off for a while, but still very strong. Anointed Peacekeeper also very strong. And they even got a Johnny in there to get them some card draw. So seems like a pretty solid deck, and they went 17-3. So very good results with this deck. Um, yeah, if you like aggro, and I guess this is closer to mid range. So if you like mid range, this is probably something up your alley. But not really my cup of tea. But it is cool to see people trying new things. Definitely appreciate it. All right. This is one of my favorite content creators, Elliot Dragon. They were playing actually Gabriel Nassif's deck, also one of my favorite content creators. Both of them are pretty good at control, and so I love to watch their ideas and their gameplay. And this is pretty cool take on like blue-white control, but he splashed just enough lands and fixing to get Atraxa to work in the deck. And I think it's really cool. I think this is probably what you need to do to make blue-white control good for you. It's got a lot of removal early on, ossification, lay down arms. Yeah, make well, they have like Blue Sun's Twilight to steal stuff. They have some counter spells. They have draw, and they have Lauren, which has been really strong against me when people play that. So that card's no joke. And you know, a little bit of everything so that their Traxa can hit and get you a bunch of cards. Very cool. Yeah, I think it's a sweet looking deck and something I would definitely want to try out. Okay, we got Sasha here, Ironic Velvet as their tag, and they got very high mythic with this deck. Yeah, I know Rakdos, so not a whole lot of special here, but I thought it was kind of cool that they're running the Planeswalker package in here and Junji. So they got 3 Liliana, a Sorin, and 2 Vraskas. I played a deck, a Planeswalker, Esper Planeswalkers deck, and I found this kind of like package to be very strong. The 3 Lilies and the 2 Vraskas. I even had a Sorin as well in my deck, so I think it makes a lot of sense to run these in here, and definitely could make your deck very like versatile. Vraska can kill everything. It's also a win con. It's also a card draw engine, and if you're running like Fable, you can put counters on that, or counters on your Bankbuster, or counters on your other Planeswalkers. So definitely has some good synergy there, And yeah, just a cool, solid deck. All right, the next one. This is from Play MTG, and they've listed a bunch of spicy brews that were doing well in this Australian champion. Well, I guess two different championships: Australia, Japan, and Philippines. So I just wanted to look at those. First one, Boros Reanimator. This is one of the ones I actually had in my top 5 brews for the new set. Almost, honestly, almost identical to this. A few changes. Like, I think they have more Sanctuary Wardens than I had in there. But yeah, it just goes to show you that reanimating Atraxa is very good. Reanimating big stuff like Sanctuary Warden and Portal to Phyrexia are very good. So, yeah, pretty cool deck. We also got Dimir combo. Is it really combo? I'm not sure, but it's Dimir Poison using Voidwing Hybrid, Prolonged Phyresis, and Arcane Proxy. This is another deck that I actually had very similar one on my channel with Arcane Proxy and Lily and Voidwing Hybrid and almost all of these cards. So glad to see people were doing well with it. Very cool deck. And honestly, it's a deck that's pretty close to like my kind of Magic. So yeah, very, very sweet to see it working out. All right, Simic Aggro. We saw this a little bit early in the season, and it kind of died off, I guess, in favor of the green-white poison aggro. But yeah, it's still respectable. I mean, you have to try to deal with their creatures, and they have a bunch of protection, and they have Ivy to duplicate their stuff. So, very scary deck, especially if they get like Ivy, sorry, Rat Priest, Ivy, and a protection or something like that. Yeah, that's dead at that point. So, very strong deck in the right hands if you know how to play it. Last one, 5-color control. I think we've seen a little bit of this with Croakies playing stuff like this, but they have herd migration in there, which is one that hasn't seen as much play in the 5-color decks, but could be very useful for gaining you some life, stalling you, and helping you get your big payoffs. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. All right, I think that's probably good for that. I'll be linking all of these so you can take a look at them later if there's more you want to look at. And then this one is, I believe, historic. Yeah, this is a new historic deck. This one has been taking historic by storm. So if you're playing historic a lot, you might have seen this already. But this is green white hammer time, similar to the pioneer deck, but this is historic and it makes use of the new Kemba outfitter, which makes your equip cost 1, and this Colossus Hammer, which normally is equip of like 10. So you reduce that to 1, and then you get a +10/+10 on your creatures for the rest of the game. So really busted stuff. And yeah, very powerful. You can win the game on like turn 2 or turn 3 with that kind of combo. So pretty crazy and yeah, very powerful. So that's the new stuff going on in historic. This is one list that did very well for this person. They got straight to Mythic and doing really great with it. But I saw a lot of similar decks here. Like this person also got to Mythic with a pretty similar deck. They splashed in black to have assembled the team, Vernal Grasp and Changeling Outcast, but same kind of core idea with the Kemba Outfitter and the Colossus Hammer. And then this other person in Japan also same thing. They, yeah, I guess they have Hammer, they have Shadow Spear. Yeah, almost very similar list, a little bit of tweaks, a little bit differences, but same idea, basically making the Hammer Time deck. All right, and then this last deck is for Alchemy, but I thought it was pretty cool as well. So if you are interested in Alchemy, this is a red-white kind of like, I guess hammer, but not really hammer. Red-white equipment deck with same thing, Kemba Outfitter and Kemba and a bunch of equipment and aggressive creatures and stuff like that. And you get the Rebel Salvo, which is cheaper for each equipment you have. So pretty mid game, and that's going to be free almost to cast. I mean, 1 mana to cast. And yeah, this deck can be very annoying. I've played it against a few times, but very resilient, and you get your equip costs for like one. Everything is cost 1 to equip, so you can just keep equipping. Yeah, very strong, very strong. So, yeah, if you like alchemy, this is a deck to check out. All right. So that does it for the spicy decks. To talk about the meta a little bit, I feel like the meta is settling down a little bit. I face mostly aggro on the ladder. I haven't really seen any Atraxa in the last 4 or 5 days on the ladder. I don't know why though. I don't think it was really doing poorly, but maybe like the win rate of the Atraxa decks against like mono red is just not quite good enough, and mono red is very, very popular on the best of one ladder. I think it's like 23% is mono red. And you also have like two different versions of mono red, like a more bigger version and a more quick low to the ground version. So it's possible that it's just not quite cutting it. It's just a little bit too slow against those decks. But I think there is a way you can make it work, especially like the Rakdos version, which has Blood Tithe Harvesters and like the Graveyard Trespassers and things like that. Seems like those should have enough creatures to deal with the aggro and then get your Atraxa down turn 5. Um, yeah, so I don't see why it's going away. Maybe people just like to get their games done quick. They just want to aggro it, get it done. Um, but yeah, but because of that, we've seen more of a shift where you really, really have to be focused solely on aggro. We also see some of the mid-range decks start to come back in here because they're doing okay against aggro, and they were doing really badly against Atraxa, but now that Atraxa's gone, they kind of get to come back in there. Esper, for example, gets to come back in. I think even the green-white poison deck, like the way that they're winning is people trying to kill their creatures and getting the poison, people not having enough like blockers, and you're trying to rely on removal. So yeah, I think like maybe with Atraxa gone, we see like green white getting stronger. We see Esper getting stronger. Um, Grixis still don't think it's that great. I haven't seen a lot of people do super great with it on the ladder so far. So mostly the ones I'm scared about most are mono red. To be honest, mono red is really really resilient, really powerful. Just the fact that you can like completely kill their whole board, have a dominating force on the battlefield, be stabilized with like 4 life, and then they have nothing in hand, and they can possibly like get a draw that just kills you. And just it's a little bit too powerful, I feel like. I don't know, or I feel like there needs to be more life gain in the format or something that you can kind of counter deal with this, but yeah, mono red is still very scary. And green white one is, it can be scary, especially if you're like have a slow start. They can pop off and they can like start casting on their own creatures and poisoning you. But I think it really only gets very scary if they've got like the double rot priest plus maybe like 2 protection spells or something in their hand, something crazy like that. Otherwise, you can just play down some big creatures, block their stuff, and you don't have to worry about it so much. But yeah, that's kind of how the format's going. It's just pretty much all aggro and a little bit of mid range. And the Atraxa decks are gone for some reason. And because of that, I think Control is having a harder time. So maybe you could build a more like low to the ground one. I was playing the temporary lockdown for a while. Probably it's pretty good right now because it will beat all the green decks. It'll beat the mono red, the soldiers. But you still need some removal for like the 3 drops in all of those decks. But yeah, I think that could be very good, and it would deal with the Rot Priest pretty well. So might be something to try out. Get some more of those 3 mana sweepers, and might have a good time. All right, I think that's gonna do it for today's video. Let me know what you think about the meta. What are you playing? Are you still playing standard? Are you playing alchemy now with the new set that just came out? Or are you in historic, maybe trying out some of the new busted cards from the alchemy set? Yeah, let me know in the comments. Curious what you guys are up to, and until next time. Yeah.